Yes, and welcome to week two's discussion board summary. Yes, this is Chris, as you well know, Christian, and we are going to just summarize what you guys did for the discussion board. Make sure we went in the right direction. We have a lot of background noise going on here at Distance Learning. We are on the floor live, sort of, here at MDL. So I'm going to hold the mic up as we talk to make sure you don't hear too much background noise. But so basically, this week was the Jesus Under Fire, the start of that assignment, and students, the discussion board was used essentially to help prep you for that as you were starting in that. So basically, you're trying to answer a couple of the questions that were on the worksheet. Let me pull that worksheet up for you. There's the worksheet with the 4 questions that we were addressing in this week's discussion board. So for the most part, students did pretty well, right, Chris?
For the most part, it seemed that way.
But it is kind of a relatively new topic, I think, to most students, talking about the Jesus seminar and the historical Jesus and historicity and that sort of thing. So we just wanted to make sure that you guys were kind of ultimately, after maybe treading water there over the weekend. What are they wanting me to say? What's the right answer? Who are all these people questioning my faith? We want you to kind of now exhale and let's put things in the right light and make sure none of you are leaving the faith and that sort of thing, or thinking that we're heretics or something horrible. We wouldn't want that. So first off, that first question: who exactly is this Jesus seminar, and what did they do? We didn't want to spend tons. This wasn't like a research paper on the Jesus seminar, but just to be aware of who they are and that sort of thing. Basically, this is a seminar of guys that got together and did what? Could you summarize it in a sentence?
Yeah. So, what do they do? Okay.
I put him on the spot.
Let's just say they attempted to find a naturalistic, a scientific answer to how to understand the supernatural, drastic claims of the gospel.
Yeah. So they are taking these big questions like, did the miracles really happen? I mean, Jesus' life himself, all these claims, were those authentic? Here's the cool thing about the whole concept. These guys weren't primarily evangelical guys. No, they definitely were not. But the fact that they met does what? I think it's just interesting. Most people that hear the Jesus seminar, especially in evangelical circles, kind of freak out and get their their walls come up a little bit. And the reality is the life of Jesus and the claims of what he did force a decision. This guy could not have been just a man or just a prophet or anything but who he claimed to be. And the account of his life demands us to either say this really happened and therefore it requires a response, or it didn't. So the fact that they're meeting is a big deal, and not necessarily a bad thing that they met, but our response to those things and the things that have come out of that in academic culture is a significant thing. So anyway, most of you that looked it up got accurate answers on that, so that we're not going to go into that too much more. But then the next question: is it possible for us to know anything historical about Jesus? Is that possible, Chris? Is it just, I kind of trust my Sunday school teacher and that's good enough for me? What about the historical nature of Jesus?
The answer would be yes. That is what we would confess as evangelicals. But for the Jesus seminar, they had, let's just say, a lot more skepticism due to they see the Bible as literature.
Yes.
And they would say, well, how do we know that the literature is correct? And to some extent, we have to take some parts of it on faith, which they are unwilling to do. And even though the evidence points to the accuracy of the Gospels and their reliability, sometimes there's not enough evidence for a skeptic.
That's true. If they want to disprove something, they can harp on things that they want to harp on and draw their conclusions. But by and large, being a critique of literature is not a bad thing, and to put the scriptures through the test of literary critique isn't a bad thing either. And by and large, when you put the biblical text up against any other historical literature, it comes across pretty strong, wouldn't you say?
Honestly,
Yeah.
You may have read about the reliability, the amount of documents that there are out there of the Gospels, the way that they all tell the same story in different ways, and there's very few very minor and things that we can explain that seem to contradict each other but just don't.
Yeah.
That a lot of the big objections that people would have to the reliability of the Gospels have incredible answers.
Yeah. And most of the students that were answering these, we saw, did a decent job with it. Some of them may not have understood fully, I think, what we were asking about the historical element of Jesus. For most evangelicals that we get at Moody, unless you're familiar with this concept of the Jesus Seminar and the historical Jesus and that sort of thing, students they don't even understand the question initially. You're questioning whether Jesus was alive, or it takes a second to kind of readjust, because we view Jesus in such a natural light of his miraculous divine nature, as well as him being God and man, that to kind of even adjust to what these people are questioning is kind of difficult for our brains to wrap around, right? So that's kind of what we wanted you to be exposed to this week. Anything else to add on that question too?
No.
Okay. Yep. So number 3, we got, are these records accurate even when they talk about miracles? And so obviously these are pretty obvious. If we're going to just do just yes or no questions, they're pretty obvious. But what were some of the things that students were bringing up that you thought were pretty good, and where were they maybe needing some beef when you were reading these?
I think most people were going, like, from the Wilkins and Moreland reading, it seemed like you were getting good answers about these questions.
Yeah.
In some ways, maybe something to work on is to have almost more sympathy for those who would hold this point of view, because it's coming out of just their worldview.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to help as well, not just say, you're
Yeah.
factually wrong, but say,
Yeah.
your worldview might need some changing, some
Yeah.
saving, in a sense, that there are things called miracles, that things happen that are not easy to explain.
Yeah.
That is what we confess about God, this
Yeah.
mysteriousness, that we can't
Yeah.
explain the loaves and the fish. We
Yeah.
just know that our God is amazing and that he can do it.
Really good. And that brings us to, I think, a good application point within this discussion board, is that this discussion begs for you to think through, when you get in these type of conversations, some of you may never have had a conversation like this, where you're dealing with someone that's pretty well versed in what they would call the authenticity of Scripture or Jesus and miracles and things like that. The reality is most Christians don't spend much time reading up and studying and being able to hold conversations at this level, because within Christian circles, these aren't things that we continue to dialogue about within our discipleship groups, and as we study Scripture, it's not in the back of our mind, is this authentic or is this not, right? This is something that is kind of a foundational piece of the reliability of Scripture itself and the testimony of God himself and of Jesus, right? So it's something that what we hope is that as you read this and study these things, you can kind of internalize the purpose for this is really so that you can understand where people are coming from and more accurately get at the root of most people's questions, which is a worldview. As Chris said, they're not really attacking Jesus and whether he turned water to wine, whether they want to dissect that story or parable or whatever it is they want to talk about and argue with you about. The best thing for you to do is probably to get at the root with them in love, obviously, and that is that they have a different worldview than you have, and that is affecting everything and every piece of evidence and every piece of literature they look at. They're looking at it with a lens. You're looking at it with a lens. I'm looking at it with a lens, and lenses aren't necessarily bad or wrong, but to have a conversation without acknowledging those lenses is essentially going to waste a lot of your time, and you're not going to get anywhere. So that's kind of one of the things that I think would be helpful to be aware of, and hopefully gives you some purpose for the study this week. Anything else to add to that?
I think I would stress the importance of sort of this issue today, that mainstream universities, theology faculties, a lot of them think in this manner, that the Bible is a piece of literature, that it should sit under historical criticism, and the answers they bring forth for the public to consume are that it's like it's just not reliable. Jesus was a mythical figure. The church was born in some late century, and on and on and on. And this is what I think more and more we will face as the world, let's just say, becomes more educated.
Yeah. What do you think some of the benefits will be when we as believers, academic believers that have strong biblical educations, when we embrace the subject of the historical reliability of the text? When we spend time on that subject, how is that in general going to strengthen both our witness and our personal lives, you think?
I think on a personal level, it can solidify your own faith in a sense that you sit on solid ground or stand on solid ground. In another sense, it can teach you to wield well the tools of history and this sort of criticism when you're talking to others. That very few people will be won to Christ over the historical reliability, but they might come a little closer because they see that we have answers for such questions.
Good. Excellent. Now, on the fourth piece, do these issues matter for our faith in Jesus? We kind of bled into that naturally in our conversation here already. The answer, obviously, is these things matter a lot. I think, again, if you have the hat on that I'm only doing this for my personal relationship, and I've already decided that Jesus is real and that these things in Scripture happened, that's a very limited viewpoint in terms of there's so much more in our life. Our life is meant to be a message. Our life is meant to confront culture and the world. And sorry, just 1 second. I think we're okay on recording, but my computer just went to sleep mode. So we're going to see if that comes back on. And if it's still recording, I think it is. I think we're still recording. If we are, hi. And if we're not, we'll go back in a second. Yeah. So the thing I was saying was, yes, these issues matter for our faith in Jesus. As you get more well-versed in these topics that people outside the faith in Jesus are really wrestling with. And a lot of them are wrestling with it with hearts that are eager to learn. I went to a secular state school for my undergrad degree. I can't even tell you how many questions. I had some of my best friends, they would watch History Channel things and academic research on the Bible and on faith, not just Christianity, but other faiths. And they talked at a very high level of these things. And the problem that they could always go to and accuse Christians with is no one knew what they were talking about when it came to these things. And they were always kind of a notch up on the conversation. And it forced me to kind of have a very real mindset and hunger and thirst for these things, because it just strengthened my ability to communicate the Scriptures, the text, why it was so important to me, why my relationship with Jesus, and what it was based on, more than just this nice idea of Jesus up in the sky dying for my sins. It's something that's based on an account and a testimony of a literary document that is reliable and that has come under a lot of criticism and debate and has held the test of time. So you guys did a great job this week, but that's ultimately what we're aiming at in this discussion, and we're looking forward to this next week. Any final comments?
Hey, that's it. Have a wonderful week.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.